Hello, welcome to another episode of Purple Insider. Matthew Coller here, and joining me for his first appearance on the show, it's going to be a hot one, Bart Winkler of the Bart Winkler Show and of the Fire Dudes from Radio Club, who are now happier people. What is up, Bart? How are you?
Well, I'm good. Thank you for having me. I'm excited for my first appearance. I'm a little worried that it will be my last. I go on. So I still do some national radio shifts, and I put out these two disclaimers to the national audience. I say, I feel like I can talk about your teams. If you want to call, I can talk about your teams. I'm an equal opportunity employer, but there's two takes that you must know that I have. One, Nikola Jokic should not be the MVP. Two, I don't understand why anyone in their right mind would willingly be a Vikings fan. So with that being said, thank you for having me.
Well, and no one in Minnesota can possibly understand why anybody would live in Wisconsin. So, I
Yeah.
think that, and yet, what I've noticed, Bart, because I grew up in Buffalo and then moved here to cover the Vikings, is that the tailgates outside of either US Bank Stadium, but especially Lambeau, they feature a lot of intermingling of these two states. It's the most Midwest thing. Like they dislike each other deeply and yet are still willing to be near each other and cook some form of sausage and then eat it together. So I feel like that's us. Like even though there's some real differences here in the way we're going to look at the world, we could still maybe enjoy some meats and talk some football.
Well, I do feel like if there was ever like a battle of states or whatever, we would end up being on the same team. We would fight for the same causes for the same team if we didn't kill each other first. So,
We probably have more similarities between Minnesota and Wisconsin than anyone actually wants to admit. There is a comedian who I see on YouTube and TikTok and stuff always show up who is from Wisconsin but does Midwest type of humor. Everything he's talking about also applies to Minnesota. So I'm sure Minnesotans do not want to hear that, but that's absolutely true. So we're going to look at, though, we're going to look at all the teams in the NFC North because we've got a minute here to assess. And so I have created an NFC North quiz. I have 5 statements, and you get choices to either agree with the statement, disagree, or I will also let you play the middle because we're in the middle of the country. So you can also somewhat disagree if you want. So here's where I'm going to start with you, Bart, the right place. Agree or disagree with this statement. Packers fans should celebrate the beginning of the Jordan Love era more than mourning the Aaron Rodgers exit. Do you agree, somewhat disagree, or disagree with that statement?
well, I'm gonna try to go agree or disagree.
Okay.
I want to be true to the segment. I agree. Oh my God. So I'm a Packers fan. We've established that. I should also mention I'm an owner. My name is Bart. I think I was named after Bart Starr, but I also think I kind of coaxed my parents into telling me that was true. I can't stand this guy anymore. Get Aaron Rodgers out of my life. Get him off my team. I'm so tired of this. It is awful. The like I don't so Aaron Rod like for a long time, it's been weird because Favre and then Rodgers, and I was excited for the Rodgers era. I would have answered agree to see a Rodgers era over a Favre era. And I think the simplest thing it comes down to is how long will they be here? If you're going to make the decision now. With Favre, it was, okay, you want another couple of years of Favre or maybe 10 years out of Rodgers, best case scenario, and then it was longer. And it's the same thing to me. Why would you have another year or two of wishy-washy Rodgers when you can have a guy in Jordan Love? So from that standpoint, I'm at some point you got to look on to the next guy. Now, I did not like the Jordan Love pick. I thought that drafting a quarterback when they did, trading up for one, was a complete disaster and a really bad pick. But that's the pick they made. And so as time has gone on, it's going to become, well, when is the start to this era and when's the end of this era? On the side note, I said I don't like Aaron Rodgers. I don't like Aaron Rodgers. I think of qualities that people have that I don't like, he has every one of them. Everything about him I do not like. There's not one thing I like about him at all. Okay, I know he helped small, but we always got to say he helped small businesses during the pandemic. We always got to say that. And I do think, I think he's a good person. I think he's a good-hearted person, unlike the monster that is Favre. He's a good person. He's a nice guy. But I just don't like his personality. Still, I was able to root for him on the field. As soon as he put that jersey on, I love the guy. I'm like, oh my God, I'm so thankful he's our quarterback. That starts to fade away a little bit. And also, I don't think he's the right quarterback for this team. The reason I know Jordan Love's going to be good is because Aaron Rodgers didn't let him play this year. Aaron Rodgers and the Packers were 4-8. He was hurt. They had every reason to sit him down. The percentage chance of making the playoffs was minuscule. And then he goes on McAfee's show, a.k.a. Let Me Get Out in Front of the Narrative Weekly. And he said, I'm playing until we're mathematically eliminated. And so before the Packers could even make a choice, he said what he was going to do. I think he didn't want us to see Jordan Love in 5 weeks because then this wouldn't have even been a decision. So appreciate what we had. We got a Super Bowl out of him. There's a lot of great memories, Hail Marys and drawing guys off sides and great plays and Jared Cook on the sidelines and I own you to the Bears. And there's so many great moments that Rodgers gave us, and we won't forget them. But that era is over, and it's time to be excited for the next guy. Agree.
Okay. I like the fact that you're going all in here. I just figured, I'd give you that option of being in the middle, but you're playing this to win. So a couple follow-up thoughts. I mean, one is we already found something that Vikings and Packers fans agree on is wanting Aaron Rodgers gone, because until Aaron Rodgers is officially out and in New York, the people to your west will not be able to breathe carefully or safely.
Okay, so let me ask you this. Let me cut you off. Let me cut you off and ask you this. Don't you feel like, and I wonder what the pick would be, but to sweeten the pot for the Jets, I feel like every team in the NFC North should chip in at least a 6th rounder to give to the Jets. Would Vikings fans not, if you found out as a Vikings fan that Aaron Rodgers got traded and as part of the deal, the Vikings gave a 6th rounder to the Jets and got nothing in return, I'd be like satisfied with that.
I think that every team would do it. I think all of the teams would say, all right, let's put a couple of dimes in the jukebox here and get them out of there. I agree. But the thing is that with Rodgers, I think everybody rationally in Minnesota would say, okay, like he wasn't as good last year. He's clearly devolving into something different than he used to be personality-wise, as you mentioned, like all the attention from the McAfee show, which then he comes back and says, I don't know why you guys are paying so much attention to me. What? I'm not asking for that at all. Just going on this huge show every week and dropping a bunch of, stuff that may or may not even be true. So yeah, he's created his own drama, as has been delusional Aaron Rodgers for quite some time. Yet still, at the end of last year, the Vikings go to Lambeau and they're thinking, all right, you get a win here, you got a chance at that 1 seed still. And Aaron Rodgers does some crazy, insane, fake thing at the goal line, walks into the end zone. It's like, the dude is out there making plays that not many quarterbacks make. So I think that everybody is willing to, move on from the nightmare that has been Aaron Rodgers torturing the Vikings for so many years. And he has, I looked this up, a quarterback rating against the Vikings that would win him an MVP in a regular year. That's like higher than Mahomes' career is Aaron Rodgers just versus the Vikings. So it's really been something. But I guess the other part of that is Jordan Love. I mean, we've established how good Aaron Rodgers has been. The hard thing for anybody to know is even remotely how good Jordan Love is going to be, because you have this little tiny sample size of when Rodgers got banged up and this little couple of plays against the Vikings at the end of the game and a couple of preseasons. That's all you got. So, I mean, I could see where you'd be saying like, yeah, like the projection for the future of Rodgers is just not good because of how old he is. He's also doing crazy things to his body now, and that can't help to cleanse yourself in a bunch of crazy ways and so forth. He didn't look good physically last year just from his body. But how can you know what Jordan Love's going to be?
Well, and I think that's why I would have liked to have Aaron Rodgers shut down for the season so we could see 5 weeks of Jordan Love. There's been enough in the little flashes where it's like, okay, he could probably play. And I really do take stock in what some of his teammates have said about him. Even before the offseason, Devondre Campbell, one of their linebackers, was talking him up, that I think he's better than a lot of ones out there. And so what I wanted to see in the last 5 weeks was not just how he plays, but how does he play game to game? If Jordan Love wins a game, how does he play the next game? Does he react a certain way to that? If he loses a game, does he come out and struggle the next game? How does he play over a 3-week stretch, 4 weeks, 5 weeks? And we were robbed of that because of Aaron Rodgers' ego. So I am excited to see what we're going to see. In Rodgers' first year, and I hope Packer fans don't freak out too much. Rodgers fans' first year, he was 6-10. That was a weird year and I really defended Rodgers that year because he would lead a comeback in like 4 of the games they lost, but there was still 2:20 left on the clock, and the defense would always blow it. And then the stat would be Rodgers can't lead a 2-minute drive, and he could lead a 3-minute drive or 4-minute drive, but then they'd always lose it at the end. So I think some of it has to be optimism, but really, I think Aaron Rodgers forcing himself to play and playing mediocre in those last 5 weeks, 5 touchdowns, 3 picks. Jordan Love could have done that. I think for me, what I'm holding stock onto is Aaron Rodgers not letting Jordan Love play tells me Jordan Love is good. And that's where I'm at.
Okay, I don't mind that logic. I think that there's just a lot of value in finding out, right? And because Rodgers was never going to be your quarterback for the next 5 years. It was one more year or not one more year, basically. So why not find out now if there's something there with Jordan Love? And we've talked about this many, many times in Minnesota with Kirk Cousins, where it's like, you know exactly what Kirk Cousins is. You know how far you can go with him. He's probably the easiest quarterback in the NFL to project to get to the first round and have decent stats and run your offense and some days let you down. And that's what he is. But even if the Vikings were to make a mistake in the draft and not get someone good, at least you would find out. And then that would set you up for the next person. And you know what your future is going to be, as opposed to just kind of resting in the middle. There's always that like behind door number 2 is probably more exciting than knowing exactly what you're going to get from Rodgers. And the supporting cast and the receivers still aren't good enough for that team to be a real Super Bowl contender. So if you're not really competing for the Super Bowl, then it's better to find out if you have somebody to build around. Let's move on to our next one, though. And I think you'll be good on this one, Bart. Agree or disagree, the Lions' past history matters, and they are going to let everyone down despite the hype. Agree or disagree that the Lions will let everyone down because Lions?
I am going to disagree. I feel like the Lions might be figuring it out. And, it's a bummer they lost Jamal Williams for them. He was really good. But they did get David Montgomery, which just completes the NFC North as the division of incest, which I swear we do it more in this division than any other division. It's really weird and sad. Didn't Dean Lowry sign with the Vikings?
He did. Yeah. Yes.
By the way, he stinks.
It wasn't good last year. It wasn't good. But no, you're exactly right. I mean, this is the history of the entire NFC North, and not just Favre, but there's all sorts of Packers that end up Greg Jennings or even Gilbert Brown showed up here at one point. So yeah, no. Anyway, carry on. But you're absolutely right. It's definitely like that.
Well, I got more. Robert Ferguson, Ryan Longwell, bunch of guys. I can't. I thought so. Okay, never mind. I'm feeling like the Lions can be okay. And are they going to win the division? Well, the division might be wide open. I think that it depends how Jordan Love does. Because in the Packers, if Jordan Love's good, the Packers are capable. This division's bad. So all it's going to take is somebody to win maybe 10 games. And which of these teams is going to win those 10 games? I think the Bears are on the up. We can talk about that. But with the Lions, I think this current Lions team is good. And if people want to worry that, well, in the past they sucked, well, then you can worry about that. But I think the group they have there, they came into Lambeau Field on a Sunday night with nothing to play for, and they pretty much ended Aaron Rodgers' career as a Packer. And unfortunately, I saw that with my own eyes. It was the one game I went to this season at Lambeau Field, and boy, what a miss that was. Very, very much regretting that. But I think that they can be good. Obviously, the receivers are getting better. The defense is getting better. Are they content with Jared Goff? Which is interesting. Like some of these quarterbacks, like Lamar Jackson, why are the Lions getting him? Why? There's 20 teams that should be in on Lamar Jackson. And for some reason, there's like not even the Ravens want to admit that they want Lamar Jackson. So, but I don't know, because right now Jared Goff is a top 5 quarterback in the NFC, how bad this conference is. I'm not, if I'm a Lions fan, I know it's going to be hard, but I'm going to try to close my eyes at history and look at this team and think we might have something there. So I'm going to disagree. I don't think the history matters. But it would be true Lions form to get everybody to think that and then suck.
Well, I think that the supporting cast for Jared Goff, including his offensive coordinator, is so good that Jared Goff can be, and I don't mean an elite quarterback in the same way that Joe Burrow is an elite quarterback, but I mean elite offensive production overall to continue to be a top 5 offense as they were last year because they have good receivers, good offensive line. They run the ball well. They scheme it up for Jared Goff, and they don't ask him to really do too much. If he just executes that offense, it's kind of like it was with the Rams, where they had the good offensive line. That's the crazy thing about Goff, is if he can drop back, set, and throw, dude is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. If he has to move like 2 feet, it's over, and he's bad. It's very Alex Smithian of Jared Goff. So I don't look at them as a true Super Bowl contender, even though the NFC is still very weak in comparison to the AFC. But I don't think that their history matters at all. I mean, you look at a bunch of teams that historically were absolutely horrendous. How about the New Orleans Saints before Drew Brees? Just a laughing stock. The Buffalo Bills before Josh Allen. Like, this happens all the time where teams are down for a long time and then suddenly things click into place and they're a lot better. You have to go back quite a ways, but the Green Bay Packers weren't that great before Brett Favre. So that is how it goes. I would say, though, that it's not without potential potholes, because if things don't go the way that they did last year for them offensively, and some of these signings don't work as well as they're expected to, they could end up being a mediocre team again. Like, I think we're just sort of assuming, and we do this all the time, whatever we kind of saw in the second half of last season was the truth for next season, and everything that was wrong has been fixed, and nothing new will be wrong, and it will all be fine going into next year. I don't know that that's always the case, but it just seems like who's better on paper from top to bottom for a roster and a coaching staff than the Lions. And I don't think that's anybody in the NFC North.
They are good enough that for at least 1 year, we can avoid should the Lions get a Thanksgiving Day game every season? They're good enough that we can table that for at least 1 year. And I think for that franchise, that's a massive win.
When was the last time in your life that the Packers were playing the Lions and you were like, oh, I don't know? I mean, other than this last week 18 where you thought, okay, they could come in and win. Like, when before that in your life where you're like, I don't know, this Lions pretty good?
There were some Thanksgiving games where we went in there and sucked. By the way, I'm a we guy. I say we, just so everybody knows. But really, it was the playoffs with Favre's first playoff game win, where he hit Sterling Sharp at the end of the game. And Barry Sanders, I remember Barry Sanders was here in a playoff game or a late December game, and they held him to -1 yards. And it was like, it was a mirror. It was like the greatest thing that's ever happened to me in my life up at that point as a Packer fan. So it's been a healthy 30 years, to answer the question.
There was a moment there where they were like a 10-win team. Maybe you were concerned about Calvin Johnson. And I would say I think it was 95 where Scott Mitchell had his one great year that they were legitimately dangerous. But that's how far you have to go back to say legitimately dangerous about the Detroit Lions. Next topic for you, Bart. And by the way, I, of course, am more on the journalist side, so not a we guy. But no problem with the we. And this is a debate with fans all the time. My thing is, if you buy tickets and buy jerseys and paid taxes on the stadium and invest your entire heart and soul, if you're a fan of a team, why would it not be we? Right? That's.
Well, if I'm talking to other Packer fans, I'm not going to say, "Hey, how do you think the Packers will do this year?"
Right?
Are you going to go? I would say, how do you think we're going to do this year? We know what we're saying. That's a very fake argument of anger from some in the media.
Yes.
So I'm glad you're on the right side of history.
Totally agree. All right. So next question for you pertains to the Minnesota Vikings. Not we in my world, but the rest of the division, agree or disagree, should be worried about the Vikings coming off a 13-win season. So what they did last year will project forward, and the rest of the division should be concerned that the Vikings will do it again.
I would say disagree. I don't think they should be worried about their win total last year. I think Vikings fans will remember that they started to the word fraud. I mean, everybody said fraud. Just like the only word that was used with this NCAA women's thing this last week was the word classless. Like nobody used a different word. Just like with the Vikings, it was fraud. It was the one word. We all stuck on that word. I don't think the Vikings are bad. I don't think they're good. They might be closer to good than bad. They're not great. They should not have won 13 games last year. I don't think a lot of Vikings fans disagree with that. But also they did, and so I can spout at you all I want about one possession games and lucky, but you won. You still won. So even if they would have in the playoffs frauded their way to a title, they still would have won a title. It doesn't matter how you do it as long as you win. I think that if the NFC North is going to worry about the Vikings, and we talked about the Lions and they may be the other team, but it's just that they might be the best of an average lot, So I think that there's ceilings and floors for every team that are pretty vast. For the Lions, they might have the highest ceiling, but they do have a floor. And for the Bears, I'm a Justin Fields guy. I think he's good. I'm still not sure their ceiling's over 9 wins, but their floor is pretty bad. The Packers could have a really high ceiling, but they could also have a really low floor. And I think the Vikings' floor is 8 wins and their ceiling is 10 wins. So all they got to do is steal one from these other NFC North teams. Like, they should be the favorite to win the North. Just like the Saints should be the favorites to win the NFC South. Everybody else stinks. So don't be worried about what the Vikings did in terms of the 13 wins. Worry that, they're just maybe better than you at this point. They've got the best player. Let me just think real quick. Yeah, Justin Jefferson in the division. I mean, that's going to go a long way. So I think that if I were to bet on it, as much as I don't like the Vikings, I think they're the safe play. And it just matters if somebody else is going to have a better year than them. But like you said, Kirk Cousins, what does Kirk Cousins do? Like Aaron Rodgers, we know what he does. He'll get you 13 wins and lose in the NFC Championship game. Kirk Cousins gets you 12 wins and loses in the first round. So we know that. So I think I've answered the question 4 different times, and I'll pass it over to you.
Okay, so here's another one. Historically, we were talking about the Lions. Like, when's the last time you took them seriously? How many times since you've watched football could you not say about the Vikings they'll win between 8 and 10 games? I mean, how many seasons have not been that way the entire time you've been paying attention?
It's been a long time, and I think with the Vikings, too, as a Packer guy, every time that we look at the schedule, it's an assumed loss when you go to Minnesota, and I can't say that for the other 2 teams at all. I mean, Detroit's an assumed win, unless it's Thanksgiving, because there have been some weird days, like I said. At Chicago's definitely assumed win. But then, yeah, the Vikings are always an assumed loss, and I do think that's the real rivalry in the NFC North at this point between those 2 teams. And it's because those have been the better 2 teams in the last 10 years. So, yeah, it's 8 and 10, but that's still a good spot to be. You would hope for better, but when you're in a division that is not at its peak right now, although I think trending in the right way, Vikings got to worry about that. I think the Lions are trending up. The Bears are trending up. If Jordan Love's good, the Packers will be trending up, and the Vikings are just along a baseline. So they're not getting worse, but I don't know that they're getting better. So that'll be something they have to look at, and that's going to come down to who's the quarterback after Kirk, I think. So that could go a long way. They trade for Lamar Jackson. Well, geez, they're a Super Bowl. This is why I don't understand why teams don't at least try. They're a Super Bowl contender and maybe a favorite in the NFC. But if they just let Kirk go away and then struggle to find their next guy for the next 5 seasons, people can say, oh, Packers, you don't know what 20 to 30 years is a bad quarterback, so you could go right back to that. Well, but the Packers have their guy. The Lions, I guess, Goff's still younger than we think. The Bears have their guy. Vikings, who's the next guy? We don't know that yet.
Yeah, no, that's true. I just, it's remarkable to me about the history of the Vikings where they are always a team that you would say is between 8 and 10 wins going into every season. Some of them they've surprised us, of course. The Favre season, though, I don't even think coming off of how he played with the Jets that anyone even thought Favre was going to take them where he did. Or the 13-3 Case Keenum season, nobody saw that coming. It certainly helped that they injured Rodgers a few plays into the first matchup there, but
Oh, they did. Their fans never talk about that all the time.
and Packers fans didn't tweet anything at Anthony Barr that was mean. They were very polite in the Midwest fashion about that. But I think that for this one, the other teams should not be terrified of the Vikings, but just assume that they know what they're going to be unless something huge changes. If they were to get Lamar Jackson, then yes, they're the favorite for the division. They're probably only behind Philadelphia for favorites for the entire NFC. And that's why when people hear debate, well, Lamar Jackson, I don't know, he's had some injuries or he can't pass, or it's like, folks, I guarantee you that Vegas would immediately put them as the number 2 team in the NFC instantly if Lamar Jackson came here. I think the Vikings could win this division with 10 wins because if the other things don't click into place that need to go right for the Lions, or if Jordan Love isn't that good, or we'll talk about the Bears in a second, then they could. But I think that they do have a very clear ceiling for this next season. And this year is really about how they transition from the Kirk era into the next era at quarterback. So I totally agree with you that at some point they need to try to break that 8 to 10 win mold. The Chicago Bears question is pretty simple. Agree or disagree? The Bears are this year's Jaguars. The Jaguars had been horrific, had the worst coach in football, Urban Meyer, maybe the worst coach of the last 20 years. And then they got Doug Peterson. It's not a coaching change in Chicago, but they spent a bunch of money in free agency. With every free agent signing, everyone said, I think they might have overpaid. And then those players helped them get to the playoffs and win a playoff game. Is that going to be the fate of the Chicago Bears in the year 2023?
Okay, I might caveat this one a little bit now that I said, okay, so for the statement you said, I will disagree. I think this year's Jaguars are going to be the Jaguars again, because I think everyone's going to doubt them again. And I think they're going to be very good. The Bears could be next year's Jaguars. I still think, they're still assembling some pieces. They bring over these wide receivers. The Chase Claypool getting traded and then vanishing is unbelievable. And Darnell Mooney having a bad year is unbelievable. It seemed to me like what the Bears should have been doing in the last half of the season was almost like when you go up big in youth sports and you're like, all right, guys, only shoot with your left hand. Okay. Cause the Bears should have been like, Justin, don't run. We know you can run. The Bears celebrated their loss to the Dolphins as if it was the biggest win of the season because they saw Justin Fields that was, okay, anyone that was on the fence, he's our guy. And I do think he is the guy. And I do think he's a good passer. I watched him at Ohio State. He had prolific offenses there. I just think the Bears kind of got into the trap where because everybody else around him was so bad, they just relied on it. But they weren't going to win games. So I think they missed out on an opportunity to have live practice to try to actually implement some sort of offense that could utilize Fields' strength as a passer and improve some of his weaknesses. Instead, they just let him run 18 times a game. So I like that they made the trade. DJ Moore coming over, I think that was a nice addition to that trade. They still might make more trades to really bolster that team. So they've got a lot of holes, but they have a path to getting that team better. And so if I am a Bears fan, I'm being optimistic. I'm thinking at least our team seems to have some sort of direction. We're not drafting Justin. The biggest mistake they made was Nagy and Pace should have started Justin Fields every game. And for their sake, they should have attached themselves to him so that if he struggled or did good, they would have said, well, you can't fire us. I mean, we don't want another guy to come in here. And it seemingly worked out for Nagy, maybe not so much Ryan Pace, but I think the Bears are going to get there. I think good days are ahead for the Bears, just might not be this year.
I think that they had the exact right process coming out of Nagy and Pace, which was to tear it all down and don't just try to live in some sort of fantasy where, oh, we'll just draft this guy or sign this guy and he'll be the difference. He'll fix all the problems. They're like, no, this roster is awful and we need to move on from our guys who are worth something. Get rid of Khalil Mack, get something for him, get rid of, I mean, Roquan Smith is a good player, but was in line to make way too much money for them. So, all right, move on from him. If they had kept him, I could have understood it, but maybe they didn't feel like he fit with Eberflus the way that they wanted him to. So just get as much as you can for draft capital and cap space, and then spend like drunken sailors and try to rebuild this team. And then this year, give Justin Fields an opportunity to really show us whether it's a yes or a no. Like, is he a Josh Allen or is he a Vince Young? Because it's probably not going to be anything else. He's either going to take a big step and be really good, or he's not going to take a big step throwing the ball and is just going to be pretty mediocre. The hard thing to figure out is, A, because they had the supporting cast that was so awful, like, is there more there for him? Or can he ever figure out the other parts that aren't just throwing the ball? Because you mentioned Ohio State. He is a great thrower of the football, but it's this sort of puzzled look like, oh, yeah, I don't know where I'm supposed to throw the football. Now, is that system? Probably not after two different coaches. Is it wide receivers? Definitely could be, because if you're afraid to throw it when guys aren't open, well, okay, I get it. Like, you're supposed to throw to the open guys and there weren't any. Or is it the dude is just slow when it comes to processing and gets sacked all the time, which seems to be the case at the moment. And that's what I can't really figure out. But they could still, even if he passes like mediocre, but they have a better defense this year, better offensive line and a receiver to throw to, they're still like a 7-win team. If he throws the ball really well, they might get to like 9 wins. I don't think they have enough to be more than that. But if he throws the ball pretty well, they can be a fairly dangerous team.
I think the Bears will win some games that they shouldn't. I think that they're certainly going to improve. I mean, they almost couldn't not. I would be stunned if they made the playoffs, though.
Yeah, I feel the same way. It would take such a massive jump. We have just, like, it's funny about tanking, right? Like, it never has to take that long if you do a lot of things right coming out of it. For some of these teams where you're back in competition, it might be kind of like Arizona after they drafted Kyler Murray. They took big steps forward in that first year after being horrific, but weren't quite there. The last question is, agree or disagree, the farthest an NFC North team will go in the playoffs is the wild card round. And let me just add a little shade to this. I still think this is a very, very interesting division, like an extremely interesting division, despite the possibility. You might disagree and say that, somebody's going to go deep in the playoffs, but I think it's sort of funny how every team were kind of like, I don't know. And yet, like, how good can they really be? And yet there's so many things with each franchise that are going to be like franchise shaping over this next year.
This is interesting. So whoever wins the NFC North is going to win or win the division, get a home game. So then I'm trying to think, like, of the teams. So let's say the Eagles win the East. I'm really trying to do the math here and show the work. Eagles win the East. Only one team's coming out of the South. So then, like, the West, are the Rams going to be good? I don't know what the Niners are doing. The Seahawks, geez. I'm almost going to say yes. NFC stinks. It's not good. I think the best teams are the best 3 teams have to be in the East, right? I mean, we can debate about that or whatever, but I think the Eagles are the best. The Cowboys are still good. They're good. Okay. The Giants, I think, are good. And then I think you can be like, oh no, well, the Niners are better than the Giants. Or I don't trust it with the Niners. I this might be more of a bias. I say I hate the Vikings. Oh my God. I hate the Niners. I can't stand that team. Nobody gets more like admiration for being mediocre than Kyle Shanahan in this whole league. I really can't stand the Niners. The San Francisco 49ers are the NFL's Boston Celtics, where people always assume they're better than they are, and the whole media is in the tank for them for whatever reason. Everyone loves the Boston Celtics. Everyone loves the San Francisco 49ers. Niners don't even know who their quarterback's going to be. They might even still trade for Rodgers now. I mean, nobody knows what's going on there. So I would say yes. I'd say the NFC North, you get a home game, you can win a home game. As much as we think this division is bad, which it is, give me one of these teams. The Lions at home can win a playoff game. The Packers at home can win a playoff game. The Vikings at home can win a playoff game. I don't think it'll be the Bears. So I will say to the divisional round, and then I might cut it there. So I'll disagree. I have a little more hope for the NFC. I think our division, the black and blue, the Norris, we can get to the divisional round. And that'll be it.
Bring back the division names in the NHL for sure. Yeah, the 49er thing, I think from Minnesota, it's probably a different perspective because the Vikings have had so many problems with San Francisco.
Well, so have the Packers. Yeah, I mean, they destroy us.
Right. So there's probably some jealousy there, especially since the 49ers have kind of won the way that the Vikings wanted to win under Mike Zimmer, which was like running the ball, having a quarterback just kind of execute what they're supposed to do, and then just beating the other team's face in with defense. That's what Mike Zimmer wanted to do, but it only really worked for like one season in 2017 to be a legitimate contender. Do you think, by the way, the quarterback situation is so fascinating. They went to the ownership meetings and told everybody in the world, Brock Purdy's our guy. I mean, are they like waving a flag, like someone trade for Trey Lance? Are they trying to like do some misdirection, but they actually still like Trey Lance? Are they going to talk Brady out of retirement? How often do we get to April 6th and we're like, I don't even know who their quarterback is or what they're doing?
Yeah. Didn't they sign Sam Darnold too? Is he there? Yeah. I think Trey Lance is their guy. I mean, I know the Brock Purdy story was nice, and it's not like I'm not thinking like sunk cost fallacy where you have to you did this for Trey and you traded, but they drafted Trey Lance because that's what they want in their quarterback in that system, and that's what they want. And the Niners, so I do think there's a level of Kyle Shanahan that's overrated. I do have more emotional bias takes towards the Niners than the Vikings. I thought for a Packers fan that came on and said, I hate this team, I don't understand you could be a fan, I think I can give you rational takes on the Vikings. With the Niners, I can't. I hate them so much. The Niners have a great, their offense is tremendous. They can get, if you say to the Niners, you have 4 plays, you have 4 plays. You start at the 5, you have 4 plays, and you need 100 yards in 4 plays. And every play has to be at least 18 yards. They would do it. They do it better than anybody. They've got Kittle, they got Debo, they got McCaffrey, Brandon Ayuk, even these, the Jawan Jennings of the world can do well. So they're very good. But, yeah, they got to figure out who their quarterback is. So I don't know. It is very fascinating. Weren't there Trey Lance, Minnesota rumblings for like a week?
Well, he's one of us, so that's part of it. So anytime there's a Minnesota connection, but also there's the Kyle Shanahan coached, Kirk Cousins, and Mike Shanahan drafted Kirk Cousins. And, there was some quote where Shanahan said he thought he was going to get Kirk Cousins. So naturally, and then Mike Florio has poured gasoline on that fire by saying there were rumors at the combine that the 49ers and Vikings had some sort of trade talks about Kirk Cousins. I have very much tried to push back on it a little bit. I don't see why they would do this, but the one thing that could talk me into it is, the Vikings restructuring and not extending Kirk Cousins sort of signifies it's like, this is it. This is the last year of him. Not 100%, but it could. And all the quarterbacks from San Francisco get hurt all the time. And so, not that we can ever predict really injuries, but if you're Kyle Shanahan, could I acquire the healthiest man who's ever played football, Kirk Cousins, who literally misses 0 games ever and kind of knows how to execute my offense? So there is a little ish sort of connection. You can squint and make it happen. And if you're the Vikings and you're looking for your younger quarterback, well, Trey Lance is a younger quarterback that maybe they'd be willing to part ways. So I see where people try to put that together all the time. I've just never been able to make it work to be a great idea, especially since they've blown the first 2 years of Trey Lance's rookie contract that he hasn't played. So he still needs a lot of development,
I was thinking, just talking, that like if Kirk Cousins, so we think of Kirk Cousins a certain way. He can win 10 games. He won't go any further than the divisional round. If the Vikings and Niners made that trade, people would like think of Kirk Cousins in a new way. Even though the Vikings have weapons, they have weapons. They have a lot of weapons. But if you put Kirk then with McCaffrey and Kittle and Debo, I would think if Kirk Cousins is on the Niners, people would rush to say they're going to win the NFC, like trip over themselves to do it, which is very interesting. But that's the way that the Niners have a spell over everyone.
No, I mean, you're right about that they would. And I think with the current state of the NFC, there might be some logic to that. But that was also the 2018 Viking logic. If you just put Kirk on a team that went to the NFC Championship, then it'll be different. He has a remarkable way of making it the same no matter what. Like the team has gone down, the team has gone up around him, and it's still been kind of the same deal each year. So any more questions that are on your mind? I asked you a bunch of questions. You got any questions for me, Bart? I know we're going to run this on both of our podcast feeds. So does your audience want any Viking insight here?
The one thing I would like to know is at what point in the season, because this happened a lot here, at what point in the season when Zadarius Smith would go down in a game and it looked like he would never walk again, at what point in the season did you realize, oh, he'll be out there 3 plays later? Because that really made me mad here.
Yes, that did happen several times. Adam Thielen was actually more known for that last year than Zadarius Smith, but it did happen a few times.
Oh, and no Thielen anymore. Where did he go?
Carolina. Yeah, Carolina.
Oh, so, yeah.
I know that I was going to say if you have a wide receiver 2 to pass along, but you don't. So there is no Packers wide receiver 2 at the moment.
No, because they're all ones.
Oh, yeah, of course. My mistake.
Romeo Dobbs. Come on.
Right. Al Lazard is now a Jet, as is Tim Boyle, I think, is also
Tim
a Jet
Boyle.
now.
Breaking news. Tim Boyle. Yeah.
Big move today in the NFL, Tim Boyle. But yeah, no, the Zadarius thing is weird because Zadarius, like, what's a polite way to put this? Ruined Garrett Bradbury's life like several times and the lives of the left tackles, whoever it was for the Vikings. So when the Vikings acquired him, like, okay, well, this guy's a freaking monster. And then he was for like 8 games. He just took people's heads off and beat their bodies with it. And then it disappeared. And I think that the injuries you're talking about did catch up with him in the second half of the season because it was a completely different player. And I think he was slowed down. And he tried to tell us a few times like, oh, well, I'm over the knee injury that he had or whatever. So now they're in this weird position of Zadarius Smith made like a goodbye post on social media. And then it was reported that he wants a new contract, but no one was really going to pay him big money if they cut him. And it's better if they trade him, but they haven't done like tanky things to take apart the roster. So why would you trade somebody who's good at football? And then we just sit here and wait and twiddle our thumbs. So I don't even know what's going to happen, but it seems like that was the way it was in Green Bay, where you kind of never knew what was going to happen with Zadarius Smith.
Yeah. It was everybody's favorite Packer when he came. He did these joint press conferences with Preston Smith, which then I saw he was doing some joint stuff right away. So he followed the same playbook. He's everybody's favorite to start, has some big plays, and then just kind of decides that he doesn't. I don't know, that the last year he was here, he played like 14 snaps in game 1 and then was just like hurt the whole time, but not like real confident about how hurt he was. It's weird. It's just he's one of those guys that, you know, the announcers get fooled at it every time. Is Zadarius? Oh my gosh, Zadarius, and they play the slow Fox music, and then 3 plays later, Zadarius on the tackle. You know, it's like, well, yeah, of course he was coming back in.
Very, very dramatic and sad. So I don't know what's going to happen there. That did happen quite a few times. I think the back surgery and a knee issue last year kind of says maybe it's time to just kind of move forward and look for your next edge rusher. But anyway, the Bart Winkler show, I don't know if it's for Vikings fans, but it might be.
It's not.
But it might be for Wisconsinites, of which we do have, you wouldn't believe it, some people in Wisconsin who are Vikings fans, but also like the Brewers, the Bucks, and whatever else you've got over there, hockey teams, and so forth. College hockey teams. They're college hockey people. Yeah.
I would say if you've got any crossover that's into the Brewers or especially the Bucks, We do live shows after the Bucks game. Should be a fun summer with them. But yeah, if you're a Vikings fan, I would only listen to the shows after the Vikings beat us, and then relish in that. That's one thing in radio that would drive me nuts. Like, we're on the border of Illinois and Wisconsin and Milwaukee, close enough where you can get the radio signals. And so I would be all pumped up after our big Packers went over the Bears, and people would tweet in, "Not listening today, listening to Chicago radio. It's so funny." I'm like, "Oh yeah, great. Well, it's just my livelihood that you listen to me, and we bank on these after Packer weeks. So I'm glad you like your friends in Chicago." But so after you're done listening over here, then you listen to me.
It's a great idea, everyone. Listen to Bart when the Packers lose. That's a great idea. So, well, it was great to get together with you, man. Love to see what you've done in the post-radio world, and we're very similar in that way, working with Blue Wire and so forth, and you're off and rolling. Great to see. So if you are so inclined, go check out Bart's show. And otherwise, we'll do this again because it was a lot of fun, man. Thanks for doing this.
If your listeners will have me back, I'd be happy to come back.